Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, we will, these are the last two sessions altogether, a new approach and a new categorization. Just one thing that I got out of the previous session, which surprised me. I hope that it was clear. I hope, as for your question on domestic violence and Tabari, that I said it was wrong and that was against it. For all of you, that I think that you understood that my position was clear. Cut here, no discussion about it, because I'm surprised sometimes that some people are hearing things that I didn't say or I thought it was clear. Anyway, let us start with now the inductive thing. That what I'm proposing here is, you remember that the scholars from the deductive and the inductive, and even the school of Maqasid, what they were trying to do is clearly to try to get the objectives. And what I said is implicitly in what, implicitly in what Shafi'i was doing, the school of Abu Hanifa, and then after this, the school of higher objectives, school of the Maqasid, Madrasat al-Maqasid, is always implicitly the context, the surrounding environment was taking into account, always, in one way or in another. And what was implicit in the first categorization is today for me, relying on what I said at the beginning and then what is said, by the scholars, is problematic. In fact, this is something that we can read also in the last few books of Taha Jaber al-Alwani, who is now he was in the States and now he's in Egypt, which is the long tradition that started with Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, which had a great influence on my work as well, on many levels, and spiritual as well as legal and philosophical, is in fact the understanding of the role of the written revelation in the light of the deployed revelation. And in fact, when deciding to come to Usul al-Fiqh from where I was, as I told you, remember, I told you, if we are going to go and to get the right understanding of what reform is in Islam, is transformational reform, the only way to get at that level is to get the knowledge of the context at the same level. And in fact, if you come back to the beginning, you will see that it's not by accident that the Arabic terminology is working and mirroring the two realities in a way which is quite interesting. Today, when we speak in English and we speak about the Quran, we say the verses, when we speak about al-ayat al-Qur'aniyya, and it's a long translation. It's coming from versification in the Christian tradition. The true Arabic term means ayah, is a sign, ayat, signs. And in fact, the Quran is a revelation full of signs, ayat. And the right term is sign. And at the same time, if you read the Quran full of signs, these signs are talking about other signs that are not in this book, but in the other revelation, the world, the universe, nature. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. We're going to show them our signs in the horizons and in themselves. This is what is in the Quran, the signs outside. the moon, the sun, the trees are all signs. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And among his signs, the creation of heavens and earth. All these are signs. In fact, the Quran, from a philosophical, religious, spiritual, and legal viewpoint, is talking about two revelations and using the same terms. Ayat, and you have to understand the world. Siru fil ard, anduru, you have to. So you read, in fact, the text talking about the other revelation. And this is why very often you have this spiritual, dimension. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. If we had, just revealed this book on a mountain, you would have seen the mountain collapsing and how would you say that? Turn to dust. Yes, exactly. So this is the very essence of the Quran as a revelation, encountering the other revelation and the power of the Quran. So I think that here the starting of the revelation was also the first verses, ayat at the end, are talking about converting your eyes. Look at the world in another way. It's to convert your heart. Understand not the elements, but the signs. And what is the difference between a natural element and a sign is that the sign has a meaning beyond the very existence of the element. So the world is a text of signs. The world is a text, and you need to get the meaning. It's not only a tree. It's the double understanding. And you come back and you get the spiritual dimension of that. I want you to understand that. I'm putting spirituality at the center of all this, not at the margin. It's the center. If you get the spiritual understanding, you get the highest objective of everything. So when, for example, in Surah Al-Rahman, الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان. الشمس والقمر, الشمس, the sun, and القمر, the moon, are following a very precise path. You can't change that. This is the natural order. والنجم والشجر, and najm, it could be the plant or it could be the star, and the trees are prostrating. This is the spiritual dimension, and both are signs. There is the scientific and the spiritual at the same time. But you need to read the signs through the trees and the sun and the moon and the night. All these are part of your spiritual. So you have to deal with the true revelations and to use the revealed book to understand the deployed book, which was in Abu Hamid al-Ghazali's term, الكتاب المسطور والكتاب المنشور. الكتاب المسطور is the written text, الكتاب المنشور is the deployed text. And here when you get to this, if you want to come to what are the sources of the tradition and the Islamic law, the sources are the two texts. The scholars, the fuqaha, of course, because they were specialized in this, they were referring to the written text. And implicitly talking to the Quran, they were taking into account the context. But if you only take the texts to get the rules and you don't understand the environment, as I said, you are going to adapt the text to the context. And in fact, if you want to move and in the light of the text to change the other text, the context, and within the context remain faithful to the text, you have to get them both together. What is implicit should become explicit. This is the main point to get to this understanding. So, determining the sources of Islamic law, the fundamental, is not only Al-Quran wa Sunnah. It should also be what nature is, the universe is part of our souls. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this world with rules, natural rules. And in fact, they are mirroring. And the starting point of comprehensiveness from an Islamic viewpoint, comprehensiveness means what? It means consistency. Consistency. They are mirroring, but there is a consistency. And the consistency is that when you read the Quran, you have levels. You have priorities. You have usul, fundamentals, foundations, and you have furu'a. Now come to the text of the world, the universe, the book of universe. You have exactly the same. In fact, if you look at the world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created that world telling us, الشمس والقمر بحسبان. You're not going to change this. This is قطعي. You have to deal with it. The natural laws are قطعية النص الكوني. The text of the universe is telling you there are things you are not going to change them. Gravitation, the way your blood is working, your body, this is قطعي. Deal with it. This has been created like this. So you will see that as much as there is a grammar of the Quran, there is a grammar of the universe and the creation. There are rules that you have to get. If today you come to me and you tell me in 1 week I'm going to change this society on the cultural way, on the cultural field, by imposing this and that, this is against what is called Sunnatullah. Sunnatullah in the world is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put rules for you to follow if you want to change the world. You cannot go against them. The same as you want to be faithful to the Quranic text, you need to abide by al-qat'iyyat. You have to do the same with the world. It's the same in all the sciences, and there is something which is important. From where do the rules come? In fact, they are coming from your object of study. The Quran is sending you its own rules. You have to come to Arabic, grammar, morphology, what the text is saying. The world is doing the same. You are a medical doctor. You're not going to Islamize your blood system. You're not going to Islamize physics. You're not going to Islamize biology. When it comes to scientific knowledge, you have to take the rules from the world, and now you can give a moral or ethical direction. But the body is imposing onto you its rules. This is qat'i. So a good Muslim medical doctor is the one who is studying the body the way it is, because this is qat'i, and respecting it. So the way you are with the text, when the text is telling you, aqimu salah, you have to pray. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you in the universe, this is the way it is, you have to respect al-qat'iyyat. Now you have dhanniyat. What are the dhanniyat? Is cultures. It's not the same. Your culture here in Britain is not the same as the French culture, is not the same as the Pakistani culture. Is dhanni, is open for interpretation. Many people are dealing with the same qat'iyyat, natural laws, in a cultural way. You have some people in the desert, they wake up before the sunset just to be able to touch the soil and to be in a kind of empathy with nature. This is their prayer. This is not what you are doing. What you are doing in your diversity is you wake up before just to pray. So your prayer is the way you are going to deal with this alternation of night and day. So it's the diversity of religions and the diversity of cultures. This is min al-dhanniyat. So it's so important that Allah is telling you, even be careful. You have to deal with the dhanniyat and with this diversity, because this is what I wanted. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا. He would have put you with all the same rules. This is not what He wanted. So you have qat'iyat in the Quran wa qat'iyat in nature. You have dhanniyat in the Quran and you have dhanniyat in nature. And you have to deal with them at different levels. So the two books are mirroring each other and you need to be consistent in the way you deal with them. And we need to get these two knowledges together. As I told you, the spiritual journey is always this: reform yourself with the two knowledges, the knowledges of the principles and the knowledge of the self. And this is the way you are going to reform, to transform yourself. So these are the two revelations, the two books, and both are starting with Iqra. Read. Read the text, the Quran, and straight the Quran is telling you now you have to read nature. وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا. Straight, all the first verses are all dealing with this. Read the world now with this understanding, because this world is full of signs. And your knowledge is to get how it works without forgetting why it works. To get the knowledge of how it works, this is science, without forgetting why it works, which is ibadatullah, sunnatullah. So this is, the book is telling you, never forget when you are studying in how, that there is a why. And the why is coming from the revelation, the first one. So this is where, when you come to the source of our usul al-fiqh, the fundamental, we need to get the two knowledges together and to get this mirroring understanding. And this is where, this is the only way when we want to change the world for the better in the light of the second revelation, the written text. This is why we need the two together. Now, if you come to in the book, I'm just talking about all the verses that I don't have time to do that now, but this is also something which is important. In the universe, we have immutable and you have changeable. Okay, there are many things that we are doing exactly the same. Among the natural law that we are in need of eating, where, like the Prophet ﷺ, and the first human being or the species are in need of. This is an immutable law. And then you also have changeable thing is the way we dress. Look at yourself, for example, the way you were dressed 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Fashion is changing. You are not exactly the same. It's not only that you were younger, you had different tastes sometimes. And if you are older than that, like us, you look at 25 years ago, it's different. You are the same, respecting the same law, but not the same tastes and not the same culture. Culture is changing. So there is also in the universe immutable and changeable, exactly like in the text. And you need to get all these together, because this is the way you understand that with the knowledge of the universe, you have complexification of your knowledge. It's much more complex than it was. This complexity is to be taken into account if you want to remain faithful. You can't be faithful by simplifying. You need to be faithful by facing up to the challenges of your time, meaning the complexity of knowledge today. So you will find this in the text. And what I wanted to just add to this here is to say that, in fact, what was implicit now should be explicit is al-waqi', which is the environment, nature, the book of universe, is also a source and should be a source of our usul al-fiqh. And I will explain that right now. Now, how are we going to get that? What I'm saying is that we have the text and we have the context and we have sciences now giving us much more knowledge about the way it works, what are the immutable rules, what are the changeable rules, in which way we have to deal with this. And for us, if we want to be faithful to the objectives that are coming from the scriptural sources, we need to know the context and we need to know the knowledge. Once again, remember what I said at the beginning, it has to do with faithfulness to the faithfulness to the objectives. So, having said that now, and trying to get a new categorization is to say that the prerequisite for going from a adaptational reform to a transformational reform is to have the two knowledges together. And this is where we need now to come to what is an Islamic applied ethics for our time. How are we going to get that? And you remember I said two theses. The first one was the scholars of the text and the scholars of the context. So if we want ethics for today with sciences that are very complex and the knowledge of the text, we need to have ulama al-waqa and ulama al-nusus. And be careful, I'm talking about ulama, and it's not by accident. Very often when you speak with scholars of the text, they say they are the ulama, and the others are khubara or specialists, mutakhassisun. In Arabic, there is a difference between alim and mutakhassis. Mutakhassis is a specialist, alim is a knowledgeable, is the scholar. And in fact, if you come back to the Quran, you will see that the only time the term is used in such a way, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. The people who are the most God-conscious are the scholar, are the knowledgeable. In fact, it has nothing to do with the scholars of the text. It has to do with nature. It's the people who has this knowledge. And it's not at all only the people of the text. This has been, in fact, colonized by the scholars of the text by saying, we are the ulama. There is no church, but there is a new caste. It's us. We are the guardian. And by the way, it's true that historically they were the guardian of ethics, because if they were to follow the community, we would have been lost. So we cannot just blame them. Sometimes it's true that some take the risk to be the guardian of the community. But the problem is, to be the guardian is to protect, and not only, this should have been to protect and not to take over the power and the authority on everything. So this is where we need now to start with this. We are talking about scholars, and the two main sources of our law and jurisprudence, because we have laws here and laws here. We have immutable rules here, immutable rules here. We have open for interpretation sphere here, open for interpretation sphere. We need the scholars of two to come together. Why? Because the world is so complex that what was done by the previous scholars, you know, at one time we have scholars, they knew the text, they were medical doctors, they were scientists, they were physicians. That was in one person, it would have been possible to get all this knowledge. Now it's over. The world is too complex to get these knowledge together in one person. So we need to get specialized scholars in one field. This is coming from the text, and this is coming from the context, and they are working together with the same status. I'm talking about scholar. A medical doctor, when he speaks about medicine or she speaks about medicine, he or she is a scholar, alim. He's a alim. He's not a mutakhassis that I'm coming with my knowledge. And you know, we have a kind of hierarchy in our knowledge when it comes to, you know, this is a sacred knowledge. So what is sacred in sacred knowledge? The question that I put to some of our brothers teaching in Islamic universities, what is Islamic in the Islamic education you are talking about? What is Islamic? Is it the object, or are they the principles? What is Islamic? Why, for example, we say, oh, there is no secular sciences, but you still speak about Islamic sciences. If you speak about Islamic sciences, it means that there are non-Islamic sciences. So what is not Islamic in medical science? Good question. Why are you morally or Islamically qualifying some sciences and knowledges and not others? While you are saying Islam is about everything. Which I think it's critical here is to say, okay, in which way a Muslim remain a Muslim as medical doctor, and in which way he is in opposition with his Islamic reference as a medical doctor or as an economist? Where? So this question is really the center. We are here at the heart of the discussion, in which we are reconciling science and ethics, and Islam and the contemporary knowledge, the contemporary challenges. So my answer to this is really to come with, we need to get the scholars together and to come with what you have here in the, which is projected here.
Which is also on your page 9 of the booklet.
So you have it, and if you want to write anything about it, yes, this is what you have here. So the starting point of the framework is different. Why? Because what we have is the revealed book, rulings, laws, principles, induced and deduced from the study of the scriptural sources. What we have is what the scholars did, okay? Is they deduced or they come inductively to the. On the other side, what we need as well is rulings, laws, principles induced and deduced from the study of nature and history. Nature, you can have the immutable laws, you have what is changeable, what is immutable. It's exactly the same as I explained this. So you have text sciences, which is ulum al-nusus, coming from the nusus, and context sciences. It could be exact sciences, experimental sciences, human sciences. These are all coming from the universe. The Quranic sciences, the ahadith, all what we, when, for example, you go for an Islamic university or you go for ijazat with scholars, they are talking about Islamic sciences. And Islamic sciences are known as ulum al-Quran, wa ulum al-hadith, wa al-fiqh, wa usul al-fiqh, wa al-Sharia. It could be also Arabic languages. All this is part of what you are, ulum al-din. All these are perceived as Islamic sciences. And on the other side, the other sciences, we are talking about profane or secular sciences, but still what is Islamic in and these sciences is not so clear. And my main point here is not to take for granted that when we speak about Al-Quran, wal-Sunnah, wal-Ijma', wal-Qiyas, wal-Istislah, wal-Istihsan, and all this, implicitly the context is here, but this implicit presence is not enough, because this is the starting point of adaptational reform. We need to get at the same level. This is also a source for us. The knowledge of the context is as important as the knowledge of the text. Why? Because these two knowledges are the only way for us to have a vision that is a transformative vision of the future, positive one. And this is where you have sources of law and jurisprudence. For me today, I came to usul al-fiqh by saying I'm reaching a limit, because everything I'm doing in fiqh is at the end only adaptational or adaptive. Why? Because we are just trying to catch up with the reality. We don't have the people who are able, for example, to come with a better understanding. I can give you an example with Fiqh al-Aqalliyat and the book. Sheikh Yusuf al-Qardawi wrote a book on Fiqh al-Aqalliyat, and the subtitle is something like Ahwal al-Muslimin fi al-Mujtama'at al-Ukhra. So he's saying the situation of the Muslims in the other society. From where he is, in his context, he's living in Qatar, he's an Egyptian by origin. For him, what I'm experiencing living in the West is in the other society, because for him it's natural to be in a Muslim majority country. But from where I am, knowing my context better than he knows about my context, I'm not in another society. This is my society. And the way I speak about my society is the starting point of understanding my society. If I come and I say, I am in an other society, which is in fact the natural, normal society for me to be there, I'm not going to have the same relationship with the environment. It's very difficult to say, I'm in the other society, and to look at the people, the British, and say, you are part of my qawm, qawmi, antum min qawmi, you are my people. Or I say, no, you are almost my people. Because my people are there. So from where he is, I understand why he speaks like this. But from where I am, I cannot speak like that. So this is why, from where he is, I understand that he's speaking about the fiqh of minority. From where I am, I cannot use that. You might think that you can use it. I don't think so. Can have a discussion about that. Because I'm not a minority. And my status, knowing the context, is to say I'm not going to let you put me in a minority. Because in fact, I can be a minority from a religious viewpoint, but my values are majority values even in Britain. You understand that? But I'm able to say this because I live here. I know the context. I know what I'm talking about. The knowledge of the context is important. So any fatwa which is going to be implemented here, not knowing the very essence of this context, could be very, very counterproductive. Because it's coming from a mindset which is not from within, but from outside. And it's not getting it. And I would say, how come? It's okay?
Maybe it's time.
Yes, before me, that's good. You got my point? So, higher principle and objectives should be extracted from both. So, for example, in this very specific yes, that's good. In this very specific situation, as a British citizen, knowing what is the immutable dimension and the changeable situation that could be cultural, political, social, in this context, I need to get this very essence of what is the context to come with the right fatwa, an objective for here. I need to get that. If I don't get that, I can just come with fatwa that are protective because we are not confident. But if I get the knowledge, for example, when I look to my fellow citizens and say, I'm sorry, I'm not a minority here, and my values are the values of the great majority of this society. I'm speaking about justice like you are speaking of justice. I'm confident. I'm not here just to integrate and to protect myself. I'm here to contribute. I'm a gift. I'm a gift in this context. Why? Because I'm coming with ethics. When you change this, the whole understanding of fatwa and the legal opinions is going to change because the mindset is different. The context, if you are scared of the context, and many of our scholars living in Muslim majority countries, they are scared for us. They think that we can be lost. And by the way, they are not completely wrong. We might be lost. But how are we going to avoid being lost? By being protective or by being assertive? This is the knowledge of the context, which is important for us. In Muslim majority countries today, exactly the same. You need to know the context and what are the priorities. And when it comes to science, for example, to economy, we need to know that. When, for example, Sheikh Yusuf al-Qardawi, he's not the only one, but he's one of these scholars who said, for example, on organ donation, that you can, by the way, it's not new that you can go for that. In Islam, it's acceptable. I will talk about this tomorrow. But he's saying that you can sell your organ. It's problematic, because if you put this within the context of the economic order, you are accepting the fact that an unjust economic order could push the poor to sell their organs. And you are opening a door, you don't know where you are going to head. And an economist or someone who is working on the field could tell you, no, don't open that door. Don't open that door, because this could lead us towards something which is really exploitation of the poor through their bodies. So we need to get all these dimensions. What's going to come with this? If you read the text, you're not going to get the complexity of all these dimensions. So it might be literally Islamically right, but it could be contextually wrong to go that direction. So this is why we need this knowledge. So this is why I'm saying text scholars, ulama al-nusus, and ulama al-waqi' here, coming together on the same platform, and elaboration of an applied Islamic ethics. This is the new methodology. And this is what I was talking about you. At the time I was writing this, many people are saying, it's not going to happen. Stop dreaming. Or you can dream. And at the end, that's true that with the difficulties that you may have today with dealing with some of the scholars, it's very difficult. You can see that you are touching power, authority, and status. That's clear. But this is why we have to implement this at different levels, in different regions, in different settings. And what I'm saying here is induction, identification, categorization of the objectives of the way, maqasid al-sharia, in all these fields, sciences, ecology, cultures, economics, politics, gender studies, education. So this is why we have to come together. When I was talking about this, I got some brothers and sisters telling me, oh, but this is already done in our settings. And there is nothing radical in it. And the problem that I have with some Muslims is that some people who are not Muslims are getting it in a deeper way than some of my brothers and sisters in Islam. It's in the States that someone came, a non-Muslim, wrote about this. I say, it's a radical change. And he's right. And some of the Muslims coming and say, oh, nothing radical in this, because they don't get it. In fact, you should understand here that I'm not talking about scholars in our fiqh councils as we have now. Having a report coming from economists, or this is not the way. This is for me the adaptational reform, that we are adapting ourselves to the world. I need to give an authoritative voice to the specialists, to the scholars of the context, coming and being able to say, on this is the way forward. So it's shifting the center of gravity, and I'm serious about that. That there will be no ethical contribution by Muslims today if they don't get it right. Meaning we need to get this knowledge, again, with confidence, that we are not scared of medical sciences and biology, physics, exact sciences, experimental sciences, and human sciences. We have to bring the people and to be able to challenge this. And not only it's not done, but even if we are going the other way around, in some of our financial institutions, and what is called now Islamic economy, you have in some banks, for example, Islamic finance, that you have the council in the bank, and you have the Sharia board. And they are telling the people what is right and wrong. That's fine, I agree, but at the same time, the bank is paying the scholars to tell them if they are right or wrong. So there are conflict of interest here, which is quite clear, and this is the way it's going today. That's not right. You can't go in that direction. The scholars should be outside anything which is a conflict of interests. And this is where, in this relationship between the two knowledge, I think it's quite important to understand that this shifting this center of gravity is radically a radical necessity. And it means that the scholars of the text should reassess their role, but also the scholars of the context. The second thing that I wanted to say is the way we call things. When the scholars of the context are coming, as medical doctors, economists, sociologists, they are coming with their knowledge of the object, of a specific object. This is sociology, this is the human body for medical doctors. They are coming with this. And what is coming from the text is ethics. There is something which is important here, is that I don't speak about Islamic economy. I don't speak about Islamic medical sciences. I speak about Islamic ethics in economy, Islamic ethics in medicine. It's not the same. It's not the same. Because the world is talking to us. We are reading and trying to understand the text of the world, of the universe, and trying to understand how it works. So economy, it's economy. Of course, you may have paradigms that are shifting and changing. And you can discuss the paradigm behind human sciences. Yes, you can. But it should come also with a clear understanding of your ethics. So epistemology is also an ethical stand towards science and knowledge that you are taking, that you are questioning the paradigm, that you are making it from somewhere. But to tell me that there is an Islamic economy, as if today we have a model of Islamic economy which is different from the current economy, I'm sorry. The only thing that we are providing the people with today is we try to get the same interests with other means. So the ends are not questions. So are we talking about profit? Are we talking about consumerism? What are we talking about? What is this Islamic economy you are talking about? The only thing that I understand is Islamic ethics in economy means you are questioning the ends of economy, not only the tools and the means. It's a huge difference. And to tell you, on that field, I met Christian economists and Jewish economists, atheists in the field of economy. They were coming with much more morality and ethics than many Muslims who are talking about Islamic economy. Because they are questioning the objectives. They are not only coming with the technicalities. I saw many people in ecology, much more Muslims and Islamic in their answer than what we are doing with our halal meat. Because it's becoming a business. It's money. So respect the technicalities and make money, which is a capitalist mindset, which for me it's a contradiction in terms. You can be obsessed with money, getting money, productivity and profit, and at the same time say, oh, I like ethics. You have to decide. With ethics, you are going to make less money. You cannot get it all. Ethics mean consider, reassess how much you want to get. Because it has to do with justice, it has to do, you can't get exactly the same, what we had like the Islamic investments in Egypt, telling the people it's very Islamic, you give us your money and we are giving you, and they were getting 30%. Oh, that's very good. Islamic economy and finance is good. We are getting even more than the classical banks. So a Christian and a Jew in Egypt said, oh, that's very good, we are going to do the same. And they call it an Islamic investment, with just the apparent rules just to attract the people, because this is the way the Muslims are. When you are qualifying something Islamic, that's fine. Go ahead. Islamic songs, Islamic meat, Islamic halal. It's Islamic, it's okay. And this is where it's very naive in that field. And we have to go deeper than that. So here are induction, what I was saying, all the fields where we have to come with the two knowledges. If we go further with the next one, I think it's the next one here. Having said that, I want you to listen to me now, because it's also the scholars came with 5 main objectives. You remember? And with the same methodology, but with this relationship between text and context, knowing and acknowledging the complexification of our knowledge today, what is the take that I'm proposing here is that we need much more objectives, more specified objectives depending on the field. So you have, again, a vertical and horizontal categorization, but with much more objectives that we have to take into account. The first here is, how do we define at the highest level, what are the objectives that we have to protect and to promote? And the 2 main objectives, if you come to all this, if you reassess this, in the world as well as in the book, in the Quran and in our different social or political or economic situations, 2 things that were said by all the scholars. Islam is here to protect your deen, meaning your relationship with God, your deen, where you are in connection with Him, and the second is al-maslaha, your interest. Knowing that in deen there is your maslaha, and your maslaha is to protect your deen. This is the very highest level of understanding. That with the deen is the relationship with the revealed text, al-maslaha is the relationship with the deployed text. Once again, the two dimensions at the highest level. Anything in Islam is protect your deen, protect your masalih. It's all about this, your interest, public interest and individual interest. How is it going to be translated? The first level in three dimensions that were not here at the beginning. The first is to protect life. And once again, when the people are saying, oh, but you are coming with this objective because of your historical experience in the West. Yes, and so what? Of course. Of course, it's coming from my experience. And it's coming from our universal experience. The West today is facing challenges that all the Muslims are facing around the world. Yes, Islam is here to protect your life. Of course. It's so much the case that in every ethical situation, when you have to decide between the life and the dead, you have to promote the life. Always. For example, even in a situation of abortion where the life of the mother is in danger, and you have to decide between the mother and the baby, you go for the mother because she's alive. You protect life before anything else. So even with organ transplantation and donation, the primacy of the life is everywhere. So life is essential. And all the new knowledges that we have in science are just proving this. Life has primacy over anything else when you are dealing with Allah. So life has to be put as one of the highest objectives of our Islam. Exactly the opposite of what is said today about our religion, that you are pushing us to send our kids to be killed. You know, all this nihilist, Islamism and Islam is about, look at them promoting this violence, that they are sending their kids to be killed in Palestine, to be killed in, all this discourse that we had in the US and in the West about there is something in Islam which is not promoting life and celebrating death. All this, shuhada and all this. Well, if you come to Islam, even if you sacrifice your life for the sake of justice and for God, at the end of the day, what you want is beyond you, is a better life for those who are staying, knowing that you are sacrificing in the name of principles, but not against life, but for something which is a better life. It's the opposite, but you need to get this understanding here. Another thing which is important, that was neglected, and now we know how it is important. Why? The Prophet ﷺ was telling us in his life, protect nature, respect the species, respect animals. At that time, it could have been perceived as principles in the way you respect nature, because the way you respect nature is the way you respect the creator of nature. Now we understand that it's essential. Nature is one of the essential ethical principles of Islam, that you have to respect nature. And why I was saying that we have to come with a better understanding of Islam. In fact, Islam, the very essence of Islam, everything which is coming from Islam, why do you have to reform yourself? Why do you have to resist what is bad in yourself to promote what is good? At the end, what are you trying to get? What is the final stage that you are trying to get? It's in the word itself. In Islam, what you are trying to get is salam. Salamat al-nafs, this tranquility. And salamat al-nafs is by checking, is through education and through reform. Islam is all about peace. When the people are talking to you and saying, the problem with you is jihad, your answer is, it's not the problem with us, is jihad is our solution. Jihad is the struggle, inner struggle, outward struggle for peace by resisting all the obstacles for that peace to happen. It's the way towards peace, jihad. Islam is a religion asking you wherever you are, ifshu salam, spread peace. And in yourself, the last and final thing that we are hearing from Allah is Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna. The self that is at peace with herself or himself. This is what we are trying to get. And Islam is all about that. Idkhulu fi silmi kaffa. Enter in God's peace with all your heart and all your mind. Life has to be protected, nature has to be protected, and peace has to be protected. And peace in all its dimensions, intimate as well as collective. Look at the way the Islamic applied ethics for today is changing the way you look at things between in yourself and outside. Having said that, what I'm putting a series of objectives that are coming as a third level, which is everywhere we have to protect that. Dignity, al-ird, which was one of them, warfare, knowledge, which is essential. Why? Because knowledge is one of the main objectives wherever you are. No human being without dignity, without knowledge, without creativity, autonomy, development, equality, freedom, justice, love. Love also is something which is important. We have to reconcile ourselves with the objective of love, protecting love, because this is one of the solidarity and diversity. Diversity, because, and all this is not put here, but if you come to the text, you will see that every single objective is based on a verse or a prophetic tradition. It's connected to the sources. But putting this as the objectives that we have to reach, and we are only going to be able to reach them if we ask the scholars of the text and the scholars of the context to work together. How, in our world today, in our specific situation, are we going to protect the dignity of the people? Solidarity and justice. All these principles are important. And then what I try to do at the fourth level is to differentiate between the fields. By saying, as Ibn Taymiyyah was putting it, that we have inner being. Inner being is our spiritual life. And as Muslims, and especially when we live in the West, but especially when we live in our time, we need to get a clear understanding of what are the objectives for an Islamic applied ethics when it comes to the intimate life. What we need to achieve is, once again, there is no intimate life without education, tarbiyat al-nafs. And here you have of heart and minds. And this is where the connection is so important. It's not only a spiritual life with your heart and to forget your mind. You need to get a spiritual intelligence. A spiritual mind means to put meaning in what you are trying to know. And this is the useful knowledge that the Prophet ﷺ is talking about. It's conscience of being and responsibility. It's sincerity. It's contemplation, balance, stability, and humility. All these principles are crucial when it comes to intimate life. And as Muslims, we cannot just rely on, we need to protect our religion, our intellect. We have to be much more specific. One of the main, the main problems that I'm seeing in our communities in the West and in Muslim majority countries is the lack of all this inner being dimension in ethics. Is we are facing psychological crisis. We are not talking about that. We are facing instability. We are facing something which is very dangerous, even in the UK, superstition. Is a lack of just being responsible, is al-jinn, al-junoon, they are everywhere. And as I'm colonized from within by junoon, I'm not responsible. So this is where we need to tackle this with seriousness. When you have still some brothers and sisters not being able to say, what about psychology? Is psychology halal and haram? Look at that. Psychology is the way you are now. Psychology should be studied. You can't come with an ethical take on that. What are the objectives? And you come with this. How do you get stability? How do you get which kind of education? How do you all this? These are intimate objectives based on Islamic applied ethics. But the Muslims are not going to get this if they are not ready to speak with people who are in ilm al-nafs, psychology, even psychiatry, and people who are dealing with collective psychology is very important. Collective psychology, what is happening, in which way we are facing tensions. These are sciences that we need. The second field is about, and this is where we find 5 out of the 6 or 4 out of the 5 principles that were put by Shatibi and Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. Physical integrity, something that has to do with health, but health, something which has to do with nafs, health, subsistence, intelligence, progeny, work, belongings, contracts, and neighborhood. All these are part of what Islam is telling us. It's applied ethics for the individuals. Wherever you are, you need to achieve that. And you need to put this as something which, because the reality of our world is, where do you stand in our world today from an intellectual, an individual attitude? Physical integrity, it's important for us. For example, when it comes to you as individual, when, for example, you are traveling in Muslim-majority countries and what you get today, many Muslims, American Muslims, even you as British Muslims, you are not talking about torture. Torture is unacceptable. It's against the physical integrity. It's not acceptable. And all this business, what if you know that this guy knows that the bomb is going to explode somewhere and you have 30 seconds, can't you torture him? No, because it's not going to happen. This is not true. You are taking an extreme situation, it's not going to happen. And it's not coming from me, it's coming from the highest level of security people in the state saying this is done just to give us room for torturing people. But while we are saying this about the Americans, almost in all the Arab countries, the Asian countries, torture is a business. While even doing it for the sake of Western countries. This is unacceptable. And Muslims on this should be clear. This is where, in our world, physical integrity is important. When I was talking about domestic violence, it has to do with domestic physical integrity. You can't touch me. You can't beat me. That's wrong. That's Islamically wrong. So we have to come with something which is much clearer. On health, for example. When, for example, the Muslims in Muslim majority countries, there is nothing, no security, no health care for the people, and even in the United States of America, or even here in this country, where are the Muslims coming with an applied an understanding of what Islamic ethics means when you are a citizen here? When you are a citizen in the United States of America, you have to take a stand that the healthcare system is unjust. So don't only speak when Islam is there, speak when we are talking about principles and ethics. You understand my point? It's important. When you get with this, you have the two knowledges and you understand, here there is something which has to do with my ethics. It's not written Islamic, but it's deeply Islamic that we are not going there. So it's in the Muslim majority countries the same as in the West. And this is where you become universalistic in your positioning, in your standing, with confidence. This is where I stand. And this is what progeny is so important. And stop coming with this idealized discourse. You know what, in Islam, family is central. Yes, in Islam it's central, not with Muslims. Among Muslims is a problem. What is your positioning in our time today, in the world, not only in the West, but in Muslim majority countries, when you see which kind of decisions are taken that are destroying the family reference? We have to take a stand. This is Islamic ethics. This is applied ethics for us today when it comes to and everything which has to do with contract, with work. Once again, it's a basic right to get a job. And the last point is about societies and groups. And you get that inner, individual, and collective. Three fields. It's within the spiritual dimension, They are connected also with the individual and then with social. So it's where, for example, I have been asked about what is happening in the Arab world. You know, the uprisings and what is called the Arab Spring. Still to see what is going to happen with this spring. Anyway, told about this. And yes, we have to come with ethics on this when it comes to collectivity and community. Rule of law is the starting point of everything, because this was the case also with El Medinian project. Rule of law is a necessity. It has to do with our ethics. And independence. This is where وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ. Shu'uban, it's people and nations and tribes. In the verse itself, you understand that you are nations because you are independent. So anyone who is coming to you now to tell you, you know, colonization was good, they say never. Never. By essence, colonization is wrong. From the Muslims as well as from anyone, there is no room for accepting colonization because nations should be independent. And I mean absolutely independent, completely independent, not only politically independent and economically dependent. It's independence that we are talking about. It's an objective which is important here. But why I'm coming with this? Because with the knowledge of international relations, now you understand how independence is important. So you add this because you know how it works now. That the people are going to foolish you or to mislead you on the field of intellectual rights, not talking about collective rights. And you know who got that before us? South American countries. I said, stop talking about individual rights when you are oppressing populations. And as Muslims, when you come back to the scriptural source, you understand that in the applied Islamic ethics, it's individual and it's collective. Both are here. Ash-shu'ub, the people, the nations should be independent. And it's also the liberation, pluralism. As we said, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا. He wanted this evolution that you are going through stages. What Ibn Khaldun was saying is also respecting cultures. Respecting culture. The universality of Islam is not uniformity of Muslims. The universality of Islam is respect for cultures. The very essence of all what we have been saying today is you have to respect the cultures of the people. And it means for you, Muslims living in the UK, you have to respect the UK culture, the British culture. You have no choice. And you have to take from this culture everything which is good and try to reform what you can with your presence and contribution. And this is one of your ethical duty. Anyone who is taking the distance and rejecting everything which is British because it's British is a racist. He's not a Muslim. He could be a Muslim racist, by the way. But that's wrong. That ethically is wrong. So we have this kind of, implicit racism towards them. And now if you have a Muslim say, okay, I read something which is the objective is to respect culture. Why are you talking about them like this? Why, for example, I'm not happy with Muhammad Siddiq Khan saying, you are killing our brothers there, we are going to kill you here. Who is this them and you and us you are talking about? What are you talking about? What the government is doing by killing Iraqi people there is wrong, but I'm not going to talk to the British the way you talk to them. Because these people are my people. And I respect their culture because it's my culture. I might be in disagreement with some of the dimensions, but many things are good. And this, by the way, would be good if the Arabs were starting to understand that. That, for example, what is this? That today, 15th century, you are asking me if you can drive a car because you are a woman? What is this? So you get the point here that this is cultural, it's not Islamic. And as someone who is respecting culture, we are not blindly supporting cultures, but being, with our ethics, critical towards culture, even the first Arab cultures. Even the Western culture. This is our ethical contribution to something which is important, and memories as well. I'm sorry, if you are British and you are European, you have to respect the memory of this country. And the memory of this country is also to respect the suffering of some of the people. You have to respect the suffering of the black people. You have to respect the suffering of the Jews. You have to respect that. It doesn't mean that you are respecting their suffering here, that you are accepting their oppression there. It's exactly the opposite. Because I respect your suffering here, I will never accept that some of your people are making the same there. I'm not blaming you, but I will stand against them. This is where, with your ethics, you are strong because you are clear. You get my point? You are clear. You know your objectives. So this is a new categorization of the objectives, and you might say there are many, yes, and there could be more. Depending on the field, for example, in the project that I want to translate coming from that book, we're going to work on seven fields. Education, gender, economy, medicine, ecology, arts, and food. I want to talk about food, yes. Yes, food is good because it's very practical. What is halal food? Okay, this is the question. So I don't have all the answers. But I want in this to come with scholars of the text, scholars of the context, and out of this to specify, many scholars in education are going to come with more sophisticated objectives. These are the first objectives that I can see and envisage, but they are not, it might be not the answers. We can have more. But it's a new way to complexify our relationship to ethics, because applied ethics mean that we have to be more specific. You get my point here? So this is where I can't be happy with very general, because when I was in Qatar, one of the professors came to me. Yes. I'm still in my time, no? No? I'm no longer in my time? Okay. They don't care anyway, I can go. No, what I was saying is I spoke with someone, a professor in he told me, oh, but all this is already in الدين والناس. I said, no, but it's too general. You can't just come with this. It's too general. You don't know exactly how effective you can be with too general objectives. You have to be more specific. And the more you are specific, the more it's demanding in implementation. The more you are general, okay, that's general. You have to be specific now. And these specificities and this focusing on the objective is coming from our knowledge of the sciences. The more you are knowledgeable in sciences, the more you are coming with this understanding. And the last thing that I wanted to say, which is going to be my conclusion, is the next and the last chart here, is in fact, with this new methodology, we are just coming with a clearer understanding of something which was implicitly here with the scholars, but I'm making it very clear in our situation, which is there are two kinds of ijtihad. There is ijtihad in texts, when you read the text, when the text is not clear, when the text is silent. But there is also ijtihad in the context, is in fact knowing the state of affairs, which was said by Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya, saying, you know the situation, halat al-nas, there is an ijtihad. And if you are a medical doctor and you are very specialized in one specific field, you know what are the priorities. We start, because you know the field, you are coming with a strategy, because this is your field. So between the ijtihad with the text and the ijtihad with the context, you come with a better understanding of how you are going to implement ethics. But once again, if you don't know the context, just to come with ijtihad with the text is going to be counterproductive and sometimes unfaithful to the very meaning of the text. So this is why we can critical reading, interpretation, and strategies in the legal field, critical reading, interpretation, and strategy in the practical field. And this is why I want you to understand that my criticisms are not going towards the ulama. They are going also towards the people of the second, sorry? Yes, the second what? Branch. Okay, call it branch. Where I'm talking about the scholars of the context and the people who are not involved and coming to provide the community with a strategy based on their knowledge. So too many Muslims are very knowledgeable in very specific fields, and they are not providing the community with their knowledge and giving them a sense of what are the priorities, what are the objectives, in which way. So what we need today, and this is what I would like to do, is common, collaborative, specialized ijtihad of applied ethics. Come together and come with an ijtihad, and it could help us to get this done in the specific field. So you get the point. The sources are different. The methodology is different, and the objectives are a bit different from what we got. In fact, is the same implicit philosophy understanding with a new understanding and implementation in the light of the contemporary sciences and knowledges that we have, and to try to do this. This, for me, is the answer, helping us to go toward from adaptational reform to transformational reform. By working with people who get the knowledge of the specific fields, you can have a vision and try to come with an applied ethics and a contribution in the Muslim majority countries as well as in the West. It's with this ethical input that we also can be very, very useful in the West. Very useful. Because very often you have scientists in ecology, in environment, in medicine, in economy. If you get with ethics in these different fields, say ethics in economy, ethics in the environment, is a contribution which is important. My conclusion here is not a long time ago, I had a discussion with Lord Parekh, Biru Parekh, you know him, the Hindu sociologist. He told me once, I'm a Hindu. And the problem that we have with Islam today in the West is that Islam is perceived as a political problem, a problematic presence. It's not part of the mainstream intellectual discussion. So we have to integrate Islam into the intellectual discussion in the West, and not only perceived as a political problem. And I told him that my response to this is that I don't want an intellectual integration. I want an intellectual contribution, which is what could our presence give to the West in our societies today? This is the true question for me. It's not to be integrated into the current discussion, it's a contribution. And he said something, he told me, for example, when you talk about environment, because I was talking about the 7 fields, he said about environment. He said, environment is a very Eurocentric way of dealing with nature. Because environment is what is coming around you. Environment, you are the center. And he said, in the Hindu tradition, we're not talking about environment. We are trying to find the role of human being within nature. He is within nature, and we try to find his. And this is something which is in between what Islam is saying, between environment as vicegerent, but also the role of human beings within. And he was saying, from a Hindu perspective, I'm not only buying what the West is telling me, my contribution is to reassess the way they are putting things. Are we able to do that? Are we as Western Muslims or contemporary Muslims around the world, is there a voice coming from Muslim majority countries that is helping to question the questions, to question the answers, to contribute to an applied ethics in specific field? Or are you just saying, we know what, Islamic economy is the future? These are the questions, and this is what I'm trying to at least to try to start as something which is a contemporary contribution of the contemporary Islamic thought. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. At the beginning of the Islamic tradition, as I said, the scholars of the text, very often they knew enough about the context to be able to issue fatwa. Now, as I said, sciences and the knowledges are complexified, so it's very difficult we need to work together. What is happening today, the only field where they are collaborating on an equal footing is in medicine. And we'll talk about this tomorrow. That in some issues they are sitting together and the medical doctors are giving them some, and it's even here we still have problems because sometimes we need with the medical doctors people who are dealing with economy because they are dealing with the pressure, the economic pressure, when the way you deal with devices within hospitals and things like this is difficult. But in all the other fields, mainly the third councils are working on reports. So you get a report on economy, on some specific or questions, and they are trying their best. They come with responses. But as I was saying, first, if you have a superficial knowledge of the context, the only fatwa that you are going to get is a protective fatwa. Is to protect you from a mistake, but not a fatwa that is helping you to change the world. You are protecting yourself, not changing the world. So what you call a common sense is really to be able to touch this by saying to the Muslims, exactly the opposite of what you are saying. We thought that the scholars were doing it. So you are wrong to think like that. Because if you are a Muslim in your community, it's high time to stand up and to ask yourself, who is giving us this fatwa? And not to be a spectator of the narrow understanding. So the Muslims and the communities are responsible of opening up. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be done by the ordinary Muslims, but organizations and leaders and men and women, especially in some sensitive issues, for example, when it comes to medical sciences or gender and things like this. So this is where it's happening like that because the community or the communities very often are following and not questioning this. No real critical thinking within the community. The second thing is by having reports and not getting the whole dimension, the complexity of the issues, you end up with adaptation. That, we'll talk about this tomorrow on economy. It's all about adaptation. We adapt ourselves to what the world is. So this is where we are today, and this is what we have to change. So this is what I call the radical reform that is needed in the minds of the followers, the ordinary Muslims, but also in the way we deal with the religious authority. And the way we deal with all these knowledges. That if you want to change something and to contribute to something, for example, in the West, for example, in your situation here in the UK or in any European country, if you're not dealing with people who are historians, sociologists, who are getting a sense of what is happening, what is at stake, it's going to be very difficult. You will get a very superficial understanding of what is going on. And if you wait for a scholar who is giving you an answer from Cairo or Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, it's not going to work. So it's up to us now to take this challenge. So what you call common sense, when it comes to getting a sense of consistency and comprehensiveness, it's now far from being the case. We have a discourse on comprehensiveness, but we have a reality of disconnection.
Is there a group of scholars or a school which is willing to take this approach? Obviously, you are presenting this approach, but is there a group or lobby that is willing to take this approach or try to progress?
Yes. Now, as I told you, I met many people. Some of them were telling me, it's already done. And when I was challenging them, they agreed, or very often they accepted that it's not really what we are talking about. And what I have started to do over the last few years is really to connect with some of the scholars that I know, to involve them. So the great majority are coming with very positive answers. Still, there is one point. Many of the scholars of the text are worried about the fact that out of these settings, we should not expect fatwa. Because the fatwa should come only from their circles. And this is going to be the main problem. But still, it's the first step. We have to start somewhere. So I don't have a problem starting by saying, let us first establish a philosophy, a methodology, a methodology in that field, and then come with some of the specific answers. And you know how it works with Muslims, and even with scholars, is when you come with effective responses, that they see that you are within and not outside, that sometimes they are reassessing their judgments. And it's always like this. For example, when the first questions were coming for Western Muslims to the scholars, they were very cautious. And now they are saying that there are new answers that are quite positive, so they are changing their mind. You change the mind of the people through efficiency. So this is what we have to do. It's a very long process. But as I told you, we are touching authority and power. And no one is going to give you his or her power so easily. What I was saying is that it was presented through a controversial way because of Amina Wadud leading the prayer and leading a Friday prayer and leading the prayer. It started in South Africa and then it came to the States and then in Malaysia, South Africa, Malaysia and the States, and it came to Europe, to even here because she did it in Oxford twice, I think. What I was saying is that when you come to the tradition and you study the different opinions of scholars, the fact that it's said it's wrong and not acceptable at all, it's not the only view among the scholars. Even Hamidullah was referring to this very specific situation where a woman was leading the prayer in her family and even in the tribe. That he referred to this, and some of the scholars understood, oh, it's only for her husband within the family or for this specific, it was a permission for her in this situation. Other scholars were not of this opinion, that you will not have one text saying is prohibited. So when she's more knowledgeable, and it's accepted by the community, and this was Ali Goma's position. If in a mosque, all the men and the women acknowledge the fact that she's more knowledgeable and they accept for her to lead the prayer, he doesn't see a problem. But he added, he would prefer to avoid it if this is provoking or bringing about controversies. But in the position of principle, you had many positions that are, in this case, with the hadith referring to the story of this woman. The second is even Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya, and even I think that if you go to Sufyan al-Thawri, you will find that they were talking about the fact of leading the prayer. First, they don't have a problem with women leading women. Even though in one school it's problematic for women to lead women, the fact that you are leading. And they were saying, in fact, what is the problem in leading the prayer is the gesture and your position when you are praying. So Ibn Taymiyyah and others were saying you can lead from behind. From behind. So she's leading the prayer, but she's behind the man. So you are respecting the separation of space, but she can lead because she's the more knowledgeable and respected by the community. Some are saying it's even possible for her to lead Jum'ah, and others are saying she can lead the prayer but not give the khutbah. Some are saying she can give the khutbah and not lead the prayer. Okay, you have then, how many? 8 different positions.
Was this one of the things that, one of the issues that the text remained silent on?
Sorry?
Is this one of the issues that the text remained silent on? So,
no, be careful. Yes, there is nothing in the text saying it's not possible. Even there is one example where the Prophet ﷺ opened this door, you know, for a woman in a specific situation. I went to Benin, for example, and there is a tribe, and the woman who is the leader of the tribe converted to Islam. And she is leading the prayer and leading the Jum'ah prayer, and the Imam of Cotonou is giving her this role because she's the more knowledgeable, the more educated, and all the people, they don't get the knowledge. And the community is happy with it. Nothing in the scriptural sources are saying he's wrong and she's wrong, because she's the more knowledgeable, and the community doesn't make a problem with this. The problem that I have with some of our brothers and sisters is that they are so sure that they know everything about the tradition because they are used to the tradition that is visible around them, that this is not the only tradition which is right. So I would say that when you come with such positions, you have to ask yourself, what are your priorities, what are you trying to achieve, and how you are trying to achieve that. This is why I think that, for example, Amina Wadud, when she was doing this, I think she came with very good questions before. And she undermined many of these questions by doing something which was not understandable the way she did it. And this is my main concern. I think we should avoid that. We should avoid this. Even though I like people being courageous and asking critical questions to this community. So this is where you have a problem of, but I don't agree with anyone who is saying this is outside Islam, this is wrong. So you have maybe to study Islam before saying it's outside Islam, the great scholars. Even though, for example, Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi was against it. He's against it, but he was challenged by other scholars saying, be cautious. It might be that here there is something that we are not used, but in specific situation we can open the door, and we have to go for that. I wouldn't have a problem within a family when you have kids, your daughter, your son, just to let your daughter lead the prayer among yourself. What's wrong with that? It's your daughter. It's your sister. And it's good. So some may say, what are you talking about? About one of the positions of the scholars. And if you are not happy, go and read. Sometimes you have, the Muslims should stop patronizing and get more intellectual humility with their own tradition, because it's wider than what we think. It doesn't mean, and this is a discussion that I had with Hamza Yusuf and others, I say everything is in the tradition. I don't think so. I think the tradition is wide, but still we have questions to ask and answers to find. This is my take on all this. And that's it. I think that the tradition is wider than we think, but still there are questions that have to be asked, because we need answers here. And on this is my position. But as I told you, this is not my priority. My priority is not for women to lead prayers. My priority is to have women that are min al-ulama. I want scholars. I want women being equipped, not only to ask questions, but to come with answers. I want us to push in that direction, because this is where power is. You know that it's not by leading the prayer. You can have a symbolic power, but this is not the very, in Islam it's not to lead the prayer that is giving you such a power. It's not like in the Christian tradition, and it's not at all the same. So I would say let us decide of our priority. I got this question from people who are not Muslims by saying ethics is ethics. No. Ethics should be qualified. Why? Because coming from our tradition, and this is why I said at the beginning this morning, I take the text seriously. The text, the Quran, the revealed book, is telling us that there are some priorities and things that we have to protect. Sometimes you can come to these principles through your mind, through your intellect. For the atheists, for example, protecting nature. For example, ecology today is coming because we are facing catastrophes, a natural catastrophe. So we come back to protecting nature. In Islam, it's based on principles that are coming from the prophetic tradition, the Sirat al-Rasul, the Ahadith, and also the Quran. So we are coming from somewhere. We are coming from a specific tradition. And this tradition is telling us there are priorities that you have to respect. Other people are coming from another tradition, Christianity, Judaism, or atheism. We might find shared ethics and shared ethical values, but we have to respect the roots. وَلِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. God is saying in the Quran, Allah, to every tribe or every community or every civilization and religion, we gave you a methodology and a way. Follow the way. So what we are trying to do is to be faithful to our path, our message, and to contribute with our ethics to the common ethics of the world. It means that we have things that are important in our understanding, and the starting point is Tawheed. Is Tawheed. And Tawheed means be careful. You are not the owner of this world. You are not. You are here to show your respect and to give meaning to your life by loving Him and loving Him through respecting His creation. It's not nothing. It's Islamic ethics. It's the relationship with God. And some people are saying, I don't believe in God, but I'm going to respect nature. We have shared ethics with different sources. And I think that this is the way you have to respect. So I'm not at all for forgetting our differences. I want to know our commonalities, but I don't want to forget our differences. And by the way, this is where Islam is sending me a message that you know, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. You are the best community set for human being. But why? There is a condition here. Inasmuch as you promote what is right, you resist what is bad, and you believe in God. Our distinctiveness is three things: our faith, our standing for justice and dignity, and resisting injustice and undignified attitude and behavior. This is Islamic, and this is our contribution. So I'm taking this seriously. I believe in this, and as a believer, it qualifies my ethics. Once again, it doesn't mean that at some, I wrote a book that was misunderstood by many Muslims and misunderstood by many people of other faiths. It's The Quest for Meaning, Developing a Philosophy of Pluralism. And many Muslims who are looking say, it's not enough Islamic. And I have people from the West saying exactly the same. I was talking about men and women, say, why doesn't he speak about the headscarf, the burqa? This is what we are expecting from an Islamic Muslim intellectual. Well, I'm not talking about this at all. And I use the mountain as a metaphor by saying there are different routes. At the summit, we can find a common ground, but there are different routes, which is exactly what is said in the Quran. And it's said also by different traditions. The Buddhist, the Hindu, the Christian, the Jewish tradition are saying all the same. Different routes that can end in a common ground. You should know what is common, but know that we are coming from different ways. So this is something which is essential for me, that we have to qualify our ethics and know from where we are coming. It doesn't mean that we are not sharing with others, but we are not mixing everything. We are not, this diversity is the will of God. And then we have to compete. فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ, compete for the best, compete for the better behavior and better attitude. So this qualification of ethics, it's important. And by the way, I don't know if you have, I have been involved in ethical councils at the European level. I can tell you that we don't speak about the same thing. It's different. It's different, even in the way you deal with things that are important. We are not like the Christians, for example, in contraception and abortion, for example. We don't have the same positions as the Christians, but we have a position. And when you listen to some, the way they are dealing rationally with abortion, you have ethical concerns. Yes, and you are coming from somewhere. You know that you are coming from somewhere, and you want to stick to this, because if you lose this, you are lost. So it means something, spiritually speaking. It means something to read in the Quran, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُم. So, which is, don't be like those who are forgetting God. At the end, they forget themselves. So for us, it's faithfulness to this relationship to God. That at the beginning of the verse, which is before that one, is يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, those who believe, be careful. لَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ. So it's very important for me not to forget the spiritual dimension of applied Islamic ethics. So our universality is not to forget the qualification. It's coming from somewhere. And there are some specific Islamic answers to some of the questions. You can't just say it's rational. That's not true. For example, Islamic ethics in economy, to say today that from an Islamic viewpoint, speculation is wrong, is to take a stand. Speculation is wrong. Is to make money with money is wrong. So it's a stand. It's something which is, can we contribute to reform the current economy with this or not? Are we proposing something or not? This is very demanding, and it's Islamic. And you are not, my say on that is that we don't have to lose this. We should not lose that, because this is also the dignity of our tradition.